Before sunrise, my daughter's touching request uncovered an incredible transformation in our lives. David sat at the kitchen table, the empty coffee mug in front of him like a weight pressing down on his chest. It was early, and the chilly winds outside were rattling the window panes. The scent of wood smoke wafted through the cracks, mingling with the faint aroma of his burnt toast. He had graded all weekend, the marks from his red pen a mockery of his once vibrant artistic dreams. A high school art teacher for 15 years in this small Midwestern town, he felt trapped in a cycle of inspiration fading into muted colors. He glanced at the clock, desperate for the school day's start. But then there was Lucy. His daughter, full of life, only 10. Her budding creativity a reminder of all he had sacrificed. A wave of guilt surged through him. Shouldn't he be the one encouraging her? Nurturing her dreams? As he wrestled with those thoughts, a timid knock interrupted his contemplation. "Dad?" Lucy stood in the doorway, wide-eyed and hopeful. "Can we go to the attic?" Her request shocked him. Memories of their late grandmother flooded his mind, fragments of joy twisted with sorrow. He hesitated, the tension thickening like the morning fog. They had avoided that place. It held too much. But Lucy's bright brown eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and determination that ignited a flicker of something deep within. "Just for a minute?" he asked, his voice more tentative than he intended. "Please." She smiled, her little hands twisting together. With a heavy heart, David nodded. As they climbed the rickety stairs, the creaks echoed in a house that seemed to hold its breath. Dust motes shimmered in the sunlight that streamed through the attic window, illuminating boxes upon boxes of forgotten relics. David's chest tightened. He felt like an unwelcome intruder in his own life. A man who had lost his passion for art, replaced by the mundane duties of survival. They began opening boxes, revealing old family artworks and fragile letters. Each piece David uncovered felt like a stab to his heart, and a balm at the same time, rekindling a long-extinguished spark. He watched as Lucy's eyes lit up, each discovery igniting her imagination and deepening his internal conflict. Could he really give her everything she deserved, even if it meant taking risks that scared him to death? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the weeks unfolded, they transformed their home into a vibrant showcase of art. At first, it felt exhilarating. But whispers of skepticism soon tainted that thrill. The local art elite, turned critics, looked down on what they deemed as mere products of their humble background. David felt the weight of their disdain crushing him. He worried constantly. Was he sacrificing Lucy's dream by giving up his own? He couldn't let the community's judgments hurt her, but could he allow their scorn to hold him back? A cruel rivalry began to swirl around them, threatening to tear them apart. Lucy's voice still rang clear with bubbling creativity, but David was drowning in self-doubt and fear. The looming exhibition felt like an approaching storm, and he stood in its path, paralyzed. As they prepped for the pivotal night, Lucy approached him. "Dad, what if we made something together?" A simple question, but it cracked open deeper issues within him. What if they devised a way to fight back? Together, the weight of his grandmother's legacy surged within him. In that moment, David's world tipped from colorless routine to one painted with the possibility of joy. But with that came the daunting realization that he might have to confront everything he had avoided for too long. The sticky fingers of fate were pulling them in different directions, leaving a sense of impending conflict hanging thick in the air, and he had to decide just how far he was willing to go. The days turned into a blur of preparations, each moment punctured by doubt and determination. David stood in the half-light of the studio space they had begun to carve out of their home. Canvases cluttered the floor, each one bearing the weight of expectation. His and Lucy's. He watched her sketch with an intensity that reminded him of the unrestrained passion he once had, but had set aside to fit into suburban norms. "Look, Dad, this one's going to be a phoenix rising," she said, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. The vibrant red and yellow flames danced on the page, a symbol of rebirth that struck a chord within him. But with that inspiration came the fear that gnawed at his soul. Was he brave enough to not only support her dreams, but also confront his own failures? "You're really capturing its movement," he managed to say, though his voice felt distant, as if he were observing rather than participating. He wondered, unsatisfied, if he could do the same. Could he push through the insecurity that clung to him like a second skin? As the exhibition approached, something shifted inside him. He began to view criticism not as a verdict on his past, but as a potential learning experience, an opportunity to grow. Instead of yielding to the disapproving glares from those who doubted their work, he felt a burning desire to prove them wrong. But how? This question haunted him, probing deeper into his psyche with no easy answer. One night, alone at the kitchen table, he did an exercise he had long avoided. He picked up a brush. The smell of turpentine was sharp, cutting through his reluctance. As he painted, vibrant colors flowing under his fingertips, memories burst forth like wildfire. The smells of art studios, the thrill of gallery openings, the feeling of creation. But self-doubt mocked him at every stroke. Amid artistic shadows, a gnawing voice asked, "Are you any good? Have you lost touch completely?" Hours passed, and he barely noticed. As a puddle of color formed on the palette, a new thought burgeoned. Maybe failure was not the end, but the beginning of redefining what art could mean for him and Lucy. The next morning, buoyed by unexpected resolve, he approached Lucy while she thumbed through their collection. "Let's collaborate on a piece for the exhibition," he declared, surprising both her and himself. Her eyes widened with delight, a mixture of disbelief and joy. But he could see the brilliance of this idea blossoming in her mind. "Really? You mean it?" she asked, hardly able to contain her excitement. "Absolutely. We'll draw from everything we love. Family, nature, our memories," he replied, feeling the warmth of their shared creative pulse start to flow again. They sketched and painted together, ideas merging. It felt exhilarating, and gradually the fear began to reshape itself into something potent. Confidence. As the final days raced past, the looming date of the exhibition drew ever nearer. The walls of his mind were lined with fears, memories of failures, and voices that condemned his ability. But now, he also felt the embrace of hope, the glimmer of acceptance. As they loaded their completed piece into the car, he glanced at Lucy, still radiating enthusiasm. The mixture of pride and trepidation swirled inside him. From the shadows of his own despair, he could see a path forward, not just for Lucy, but for himself. "Dad, what if no one likes it?" Her voice sliced through his thoughts, echoing his deepest fears. "Then we'll create something else," he said, the words flowing easier than he had anticipated. "We'll keep creating, keep exploring, no matter what." But as they arrived at the gallery, a chill crept through him. The environment pulsed with skepticism, and he could almost taste the doubts in the air like an impending storm. It was then he realized a confrontation was inevitable. This one, however, felt different. It was not just about their work, but a test of who he had become. The heavy door swung open, and David stepped inside, uncertainty gripping him. It was time to face the critics, to measure his worth not against opinions, but against the passion he had reignited. Would his internal transformation hold firm against external judgment? Only the evening's unfolding could tell. As they ventured deeper into the gallery, David's senses heightened, with the ambiance shifting from welcoming to suffocatingly claustrophobic. The walls seemed to loom larger, adorned with vibrant pieces reflecting artists who had confidence and clarity, qualities he still felt elusive. A whisper of panic fluttered in his chest. This wasn't just about art. It was about who he was now. He felt the weight of Lucy's small hand in his, grounding yet exhilarating as she tugged him toward the other artists, many of whom were lost in their creative circles. He grew conscious of their gazes flicking toward him, assessing, judging. His thoughts spiraled. Would his work be worthy of this space? Would they see the man behind the brush, or just another failed artist clinging to past aspirations? "Daddy? I can't wait for everyone to see our painting." Her innocent excitement sent pangs of warmth through his insides, but also intensified his internal conflict. He watched her radiant face, the complete absence of doubt in her eyes, and he wished to share that naivete. "Let's find a spot to hang it," he said, his voice strained but determined. He led Lucy onward, fighting against the encroaching feelings of inadequacy. Each step felt heavier, as if the memories of his unfulfilled potential were tethering him to the ground. Finally, they reached a designated area filled with a spectrum of colors and emotions, a wall that could spark inspiration or feel dauntingly alien. Together they lifted their piece, a vibrant tableau alive with birds swirling in a chaotic dance against a stark blue background. It wasn't just their collaboration, but a window into their relationship. An amalgam of desperation, hope, and dreams. Once hung, David took a few steps back. The painting seemed to encapsulate everything he felt, but couldn't articulate. A truth swelled within him. This wasn't merely a representation of his and Lucy's artistic capabilities, but a testament to their shared journey, a literal and metaphorical symbol of rebirth. It struck him then. They were not merely displaying their art. They were unveiling who they were becoming. Lucy beamed beside him, her confidence wrapping around him like a protective shield. As guests began to trickle in, filling the room with hushes and whispers, he slowed his breath, feeling her energy unwinding his tension. He realized, despite the moments of doubt that still flickered in his mind, this journey was as much about collective courage and vulnerability. But then came the critiques, sharp and pointed, slicing through his new resolve like a sudden gust of cold wind. David overheard a couple of attendees debating the purpose of their work. "Is there even a message here?" one asked dismissively. The heaviness returned, a punch to the gut that tested his hard-won confidence. "What if they're right, Lucy?" The words tumbled from his mouth before he could stop them, a bitter reminder of his old self. He felt her gaze on him, steadfast and implacable. "Dad, it's okay," she insisted, her voice brimming with unshakable confidence. "It means something to us. That's what's important." Her words reverberated in his mind, dispelling some of the fog that had settled around his heart. Perhaps this was not just a test of their art, but a testament to their resilience together. He recognized that each brushstroke of self-doubt could no longer define him or their art. It could only serve as a backdrop for what they were now capable of achieving. As the gallery buzzed with a mixture of cheers and critiques, David felt a flicker of realization spark within him. Perhaps he was not showing a mere painting, but rather his journey towards authenticity. He clutched Lucy's hand tighter, the heat of her youthful enthusiasm rekindling the flame within him. "You're right. It's what we feel that matters," he said, making peace with the uncertain ground beneath them. But as someone approached with a discerning expression, preparing to voice their opinion, David felt a chill crackle in the air. Would he be able to hold on to this newfound strength? Or would doubt pull him back into its grip? The moment of truth was upon him, and he couldn't escape the feeling that this encounter could change everything. The figure moved closer, an air of authority trailing behind them. David's heart raced. This was the moment he both anticipated and dreaded. The person, a tall man with an expressive face framed by unruly curls, approached with purpose, already assessing the painting. David's palms felt suddenly clammy against his daughter's hand. "Interesting choice of colors," the man stated, peering closely at the vibrant swirl of blues and yellows. David braced himself, ready to encounter the inevitable critique that would slice through the hopes he had so cautiously nurtured. "Thank you," David managed, his voice a whisper. Each word felt like an offering, revealing the vulnerability that crept into his thoughts. "It's a collaboration between my daughter and me." So you must be Lucy's father," the man said, his demeanor shifting into something warmer as he turned to Lucy, who stood proudly next to him. "What an ambitious piece. I imagine this took a lot of time and experimentation?" "It did. We had so much fun," Lucy chirped, her eyes sparkling as she shared their process, expressing the joy and challenges as if they were engraved memories. David watched her speak, amazed at how effortlessly she embodied confidence. It was a stark contrast to his own struggle, where every word felt loaded with uncertainty. For a moment, he allowed her energy to envelop him, shifting his mental focus away from his internal critique. "And what's the story here?" the man asked, his voice curious yet gentle. Lucy glanced at David, as if seeking permission, and he nodded. With a proud little smile, she explained the birds in their painting, the chaotic dance signifying freedom, and their experiences navigating life's storms together. David listened, barely containing a swell of pride and humility. Watching his daughter, he recognized a spark of identity within her words. They were expressing the unfiltered truth of their shared journey. That was what the painting embodied. Not just his fears, but their resilience as a duo. It occurred to David that perhaps even amidst his self-doubts, he had equipped Lucy with tools to confront the world. A sense of warmth replaced the chill as the man's gaze drifted back to David. "You've raised a remarkable artist here, David," the man said, his tone crisp and punctuated with sincerity. "It's not just about the technical skills. It's about emotional expression and connection, which shines through in your work." David felt the walls around him begin to shift. The space once cloaked in the shadows of judgment, now illuminated with possibility. Could it be that this artist saw beyond his self-imposed limitations? Perhaps, just as he had come to grasp this, the world could also recognize the merit of what they'd created together. "Thank you," David finally replied, the words imbuing him with newfound strength. "I think we both learned a lot through this process, about art and about ourselves." He watched the man nod, his focused expression signaling understanding. As the conversation continued, David leaned into the discussion about the significance of emotional honesty in art. In his heart, he felt a soft reaffirmation of his abilities. Words flowed more freely now, emboldened by the support surrounding him. The critiques that lurked like shadows began to dissolve. Yet amid this burgeoning sense of empowerment, a question loomed in the back of his mind. Was he truly ready to embrace this new chapter? The man, sensing the shift in David's demeanor, engaged further, asking questions that dug deeper into his artistic motivations and fears. As the exchange unfolded, a thought sparked within David. Perhaps this moment was more than just about art. It was about reclaiming his own narrative. He considered the path that had led him here, not just as an artist, but as a father and individual reclaiming his voice. Even in this gallery filled with critical eyes, he found his stance solidifying. Lucy tugged at his sleeve, her eyes shining. "Dad, can we paint more together? I love it when you let me choose." "Yes," he said, the word laced with conviction. The urge to explore their creativity together blossomed within him. But just as hope surged, a looming fear surfaced. Was he prepared for what these words and actions could mean for him moving forward? Behind them, a sudden laugh erupted, and their moment shifted, leaving David questioning how vulnerable he was willing to be. The vibrant impulses of his own journey swirled around him. But could he truly step into the unknown? The moment to define himself loomed large, drawing him nearer to a choice that felt as daunting as it was invigorating. There was only one way forward. The question was whether he would dare to embrace it or retreat into the familiar shadows once more. The conversation shifted, and David felt the ground beneath him become fragile, a thin layer of confidence threatening to crack as he leaned into the exhilarating unknown. The man's encouraging words had ignited a flicker of ambition, yet a shadow of doubt crept back in. With the echo of Lucy's joyful request lingering in his ears, he faced the question haunting him. Could he consistently merge his vulnerabilities and aspirations? Systems of belief can be imprisoning, the man commented, drawing David back to the moment. The process of creating art with your child. It has the power to liberate you. Liberate. The word danced in David's mind like a whisper illuminating a dark room. What if his hesitance had shackled him, kept him from exploring his artistry and the emotional depths present in their creative sanctuaries? They didn't merely paint. They sculpted stories, forged connections that became their very identity. David caught another glance at Lucy, her vibrant aura contrasting against the mundane gallery walls. In her, he saw a reflection of the openness he yearned to adopt. His hands tightened around hers as he momentarily wrestled with the idea of pulling away, seeking the solace of self-doubt. What if we attempt an exhibition together? The thought blurted from David's mouth, surprising even himself. An exhibition? Lucy's eyes widened, trailing into dreams as visions etched her youthful imagination. With all our art? That would be so fun. The man chuckled softly, sensing an unexpected direction. It sounds like you're on the brink of a transformation, David. But it requires more than just fun. It calls for the courage to unveil your authentic self and your art. Could he expose himself, his family, their joys and pains, to the world? He battled the inclination to suppress the debilitating fear that threatened the warmth blooming inside him. The moment required honesty, not just about their artwork, but about the struggle that birthed it. Would honesty invite criticism or perhaps acceptance? A grin broke across Lucy's face, igniting a yearning in David. She wasn't just an artist. She was a fire, igniting his passion. Dad, we can share the stories of each painting. It'll be like telling everyone about our adventures. He studied her bubbling enthusiasm. The sheer idea of articulating their experiences made the thought of vulnerability less daunting, transforming it into a bridge connecting their worlds. Could their shared narrative become more powerful when openly shared? Absolutely, David affirmed, creature of uncertainty slowly transforming into a potential exhibitionist, burgeoning with resolve. Let's create a series of pieces, each reflecting a part of our journey. Despite the thrumming anxiety within, the excitement dared him to imagine a future unraveling like a refreshing breeze. Hours zipped by as they planned their next steps with fervor, sketching ideas and memories, gathering vibrant textures and colors akin to the lives they lived. In those moments of creation, a cathartic shift pulsed through David, untethering remnants of self-doubt. His talents, once shadowed, began to unfurl in bright reinvention. Yet, deep within, lingering apprehension nagged at him. The exhibition may symbolize their growth, But what if it exposed his flaws instead? What if their vulnerabilities bared before an audience transformed to ridicule rather than appreciation? Before he could spiral again, Lucy tugged at him insistently. "Dad, promise me we'll work hard on this. We can do it together. I promise," he whispered, a saccharine taste of determination settling in his chest. But with that promise lay an underlying truth. Part of growing was preparing for the storm that might follow light. As David stepped away from the gallery, his resolve deeper yet, bridled with a sensation of foreboding, he couldn't shake off the feeling that this was merely the beginning of a more profound reckoning. Would their journey become a testament to resilience, or a cautionary tale against exposing the raw parts of themselves? The truth may be a fracture bedrock, one that could either ground him or shatter under pressure. What awaited them was uncertain, but the exhilaration of stepping boldly into uncharted waters loomed ahead. The time had come, and David could only hope that embracing the unpredictable path would guide him toward the authentic self he had always yearned to be. But a question chilled him deeply. How much of his soul was he willing to reveal as they prepared for their transformative leap into the world? Weeks passed since that illuminating gallery visit, and David was engulfed in a whirlwind of creativity and emotion. Each day, he and Lucy immersed themselves in their shared project, transfixed by the act of creation. Their home transformed into a vibrant studio, splattered with paint and echoing laughter. Yet beneath the surface of this artistic blossoming, David wrestled with an unsettling dichotomy. Exhilaration intertwined with a paralyzing anxiety. As they sketched their pieces, the stories pouring forth turned into a living tapestry of joy and struggle. David found himself unearthing not only memories, but fragments of his identity he had long buried. He contemplated how the subtle textures of their narratives, each brushstroke and color choice, could serve as both a veil and an unveiling. One afternoon, Lucy, flicking her paintbrush in a flourish, asked, "Dad, what's your favorite memory?" The question hung in the air, rich with unfiltered curiosity. David grappled internally. Could he share the darker parts of his past? Fears that prickled at the edges of his creativity? Hesitation tightened his throat. "Let me think," he said, forcing a casual tone. In truth, he was navigating the tumultuous depths of regret, a chasm he feared would swallow him whole if illuminated. But Lucy's innocent enthusiasm urged him forward. "What about that time we went camping and saw the shooting stars?" Her eyes sparkled, reflecting the same wonder they clung to when they traversed unexplored landscapes. "Remember how we made up the constellations?" He smiled at the memory, a haunting comfort renewing his spirit. That trip had been a rare moment of authentic connection, a reprieve from the noise of life. But beneath the fondness tempered a poignant reminder of his own unresolved dreams. "Yes, I do," he finally replied. "But I want to share something deeper, something that shaped me. Do you want to hear it?" Lucy nodded earnestly, urging him on. David found himself spiraling back to his youth, recounting tales steeped in vulnerability. A childhood marked by a struggle for acceptance and the weight of expectations. As he spoke, he tended toward the jagged truths, the mistakes that had left scars. Each word felt like a layer being shed, exposing the fragility he feared would shatter the image of the strong father Lee tried to embody. "I hesitated for so long to pursue my passions because I was afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of what others might think. But what I didn't realize was that hiding from my truth only made me invisible," he confessed, the honesty washing over him in waves. Tears gathered in Lucy's eyes as she listened. "But you're not invisible now, Dad," she whispered, her voice quaking just beneath the surface of childhood innocence. "You're here with me, creating art." Her words struck him like a soothing balm, one that latched onto his insecurities and pulled them into light. Yet a residual fear crept in. a whisper reminding him of the risks ahead. Could he lead this project while still coping with the ghosts of his past? Would unveiling their stories liberate or expose them to unforeseen vulnerabilities? Despite the reassurance of Lucy's presence, the looming exhibition now felt monumental, an unsteady tightrope strung high above the chasm of judgment and ridicule. David's mind zigzagged through scenarios both hopeful and terrifying, racing toward a conclusion he both feared and yearned to confront. I guess we're all just... He began slowly, weighing each word as if it held the potential to tilt the balance of their journey. Finding our place in the universe, trying to paint our own constellations. With each revelation, he sensed the weight of impending transformation. Was he truly prepared to share their intertwined narratives with the world? To bridge the distance between vulnerability and expression? The prospect invigorated and terrified him in equal measure. That night, David lay awake, contemplating the enormity of what lay ahead. Tomorrow, they would invite friends and family to their first showcase. A soft opening, an intimate affair surrounding their amateur art. But even that small gesture loomed large with the weight of expectation and personal credence. The next day, as they hung their pieces against the crisp white walls, David felt an awakening pulse of determination coursing through him. The decision to embrace their truth had been made. But in the quiet of the gallery, as the clock neared the hour of unveiling, a single thought plagued him. Would this act of courage lead to acceptance or expose the rawest parts of their souls to the unforgiving gaze of the world? As he prepared for the crowd's arrival, the swirling uncertainty churned within him, leading him toward a moment that would forever redefine who he was willing to be, and what he might lose in the process. As the clock ticked closer to the opening hour, the once calm gallery buzzed with the sound of footsteps and muted conversations. David adjusted the lighting one last time, a nervous energy making his fingers tremble. The overhead spots illuminated their artwork, each piece a vivid reflection of the late nights spent poring over paint and canvases. Yet anxiety clawed at him like a wild beast, relentless and consuming. With every new arrival, David felt the clenching sensation grow tighter in his chest. He stood alone near the refreshment table, watching the familiar faces mingle with a fervor that made him both proud and self-conscious. Each smile and laugh felt like an echo from a past where he was more confident, a stark contrast to the amalgamation of hope and fear that had rooted itself within him today. Had he misstepped by sharing his innermost fears with Lucy? Would it play out against him now? Lucy flitted through the crowd like a vibrant butterfly, her excitement palpable. She conversed with family and friends, recounting the stories behind each piece, her passion filling the air with a warmth he had longed to embrace. David observed her, admiration battling with his perception of inadequacy. She was so unrestrained, so free. The contrast only amplified the tightness in his gut. As the opening officially commenced, David could no longer remain a passive observer. He felt compelled to step forward, to engage. Yet, as he approached a small gathering of friends, words dissolved into a fog of uncertainty. Was he ready to face the reactions? Then David spotted Lucy, her smile radiant as she gestured animatedly to one of their paintings. His heart swelled. She embodied all the truth and courage he had wished to rediscover. In that moment, he decided, he would not cower hidden in the shadows of his past tonight. He would stand beside her, sharing the narratives they had dared to paint. "Everyone!" he called out, his voice stronger than he anticipated, weaving through the murmur of the crowd. Heads turned toward him, curiosity peaking as David stood tall, summoning the confidence that had bubbled beneath the surface. "We'd like to share not just our art with you, but the stories behind it. Stories of both our joy and our challenges." He sensed the vibrations of the room shift as quiet enveloped them. The vulnerability he had once feared now offered an unexpected strength. With each word, He felt the weight of his anxieties begin to lighten, releasing him from the shackles of self-doubt. Art is an expression of us, and we invite you to step with us into our shared story. He barely noticed the looks of intrigue and kindness that flowed around him. He felt anchored in the moment, emboldened by his own honesty. Yet as he glanced at Lucy, her bright eyes widened, and the intense support radiating from her made the world outside their creations momentarily blur and fade. Again he thought of the night he shared his fears with Lucy. The act of sharing is easier with someone to hold your hand, he reflected, a newfound determination surging through him. Perhaps exposing their vulnerabilities could foster connection, rather than judgment. It was the rawness of experience, the sincere embrace of uncertainty, that could tie them to others. Before long, the crowd began to engage with their creations, questions bubbling to the surface, emotions rising like the tide. Each interaction fed David's growing conviction. He wasn't merely an artist plagued by fear. He was a storyteller inviting others to weave their own narratives around his and Lucy's. As conversations deepened, David found himself exchanging insights. The challenges of parenthood, the fears of artistic expression, and the courage it took to reveal oneself to the world. It was exhilarating, liberating even. Yet the remnants of doubt still lingered, whispering to him beneath the din. Could this newfound openness give way to acceptance or criticism? While the evening unfolded with laughter and warmth, his mind churned with unrelenting questions. What if their vulnerability exposed them to more pain? The thought struck like a lightning flash, reminding him that taking risks meant confronting more than just his past. In the midst of laughter, calls for more wine, and admiring comments about their art, David's heart raced as one of the attendees approached, eyes locked on him. This encounter felt different. A familiar face emerged from the sea of strangers, a figure he had long tried to forget suddenly stepping forward. A remnant from a past he had thought buried. The moment hung suspended before him, the revelation like a heavy stone thrown across a calm pond, rippling outward. As the crowded gallery neatly faded away, David realized that this confrontation could either resurrect old wounds or offer a breathtaking chance for reconciliation that he had never envisioned. The time had come to confront not only his fears, but the specter of his previous choices as well. Would David summon the courage to embrace this unexpected reunion? Or would the darkness of the past claw back into his life once more? David's breath caught in his throat as the familiar figure stepped closer through the wall of lively chatter. It was Matthew, an ex-colleague, someone who had once defined a chapter in David's life he had spent years trying to escape. The man's sharp features, usually adorned with a smug grin, were now tinged with a serious expression that begged for attention. "David," Matthew said, the tension evident in his voice as he drew near. David felt his defenses erect like steel walls. This was a man who had seen him at both his lowest and highest, and the unspoken history between them throbbed with unresolved tension. "What do you want?" David managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil under the surface. He could feel Lucy's eyes searching for his, her unwavering belief in him urging him to remain composed. "I came to see your work," Matthew replied, his tone softer, caught off guard by David's composure. "I knew you'd be here, and I wanted to talk. There's something I've been meaning to say." David's heart raced. The past felt precariously close, threatening to unravel the newfound confidence he had experienced just moments before. "Talk?" David echoed, incredulous and defensive. "You think everything could just come rushing back like that?" Matthew's eyes flickered with recognition of the chasm that separated them. "I know we left things unfinished," he admitted, "but I'm not the same guy you knew. I've changed." David's mind flared. Change was a luxury he had sought, but never truly believed could happen. He looked back at the crowd, the conversations a distant hum now, and the laughter a harsh contrast to the gravity of his moment. "Change?" he questioned, raising an eyebrow. "What makes you think I should take your word for it?" Matthew paused, vulnerability peeking through his facade. "I've learned from my mistakes," he said, genuine remorse coloring his words. "And I know I hurt you. I just want to explain." That word, explain, sounded like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. David's chest tightened with the weight of choice. He could dismiss Matthew, uphold the barriers he had painstakingly built, or he could risk it, just as he had risked sharing himself with the audience tonight. A flash of Lucy's smile entered his thoughts, her passion for art and honesty reflecting his own recent awakening. Maybe confronting Matthew could be a kind of art, sculpting the jagged edges of pain into something coherent. "Just a moment," David replied, stepping away from the gathering but keeping the warmth of the room close enough to grasp. "What do you want to say?" he finally asked, intrigued yet cautious. Relief washed over Matthew's features, nearly imperceptible, but unmistakable. "I know this is odd for both of us, but I've been in therapy. You have no idea how much I've struggled," he said, his voice gaining momentum. "It took a long time for me to face what I'd done, and I've spent even longer avoiding those who mattered, especially you. I truly am sorry. I want to make it right." David leaned back mentally, grappling with the jagged pieces of his past. Could reconciliation be on the horizon? His gut instinct told him to protect himself, but another part sought closure, a strange longing to connect the dots left unresolved. How encouraging would it be to see someone else embrace change? "What did you want to change?" David pressed, genuinely curious now. "I want to apologize for how I treated you," Matthew explained, his voice heavy with sincerity. "For letting your talent be overshadowed by my own insecurities. You know it shouldn't have been that way." Tension drifted in David's mind like a fog. This could be an opportunity to reclaim a narrative, to reclaim himself. Yet could he let down the walls he'd built to guard his vulnerabilities? Drawing a breath, David felt a monumental decision hover in the balance between resurgence and retreat. "I need to think," he finally offered, holding up a hand. But the words felt different, charged with a newfound sense of possibility. He was no longer marooned in anxiety. As Matthew nodded, David turned back toward the crowd, tethering himself to the artistic joy they had created. Conversations flowed, laughter erupted, but a mental veil still hung between him and the shared warmth. Would this moment be the catalyst for true transformation, a bridge between the past and the future? And more importantly, could he forgive himself enough to embrace the change he had always sought? The festival's pulse quickened around him, and the kaleidoscope of emotions swirled. Yet within the chaos of uncertainty loomed an undeniable truth. This was about more than past mistakes. It was about forging ahead with resilience and clarity. As he caught Lucy's eye across the gallery, her encouragement just a heartbeat away, David knew a reckoning was at hand. Not just a confrontation with Matthew, but a reckoning with himself. What defined his future remained uncharted terrain, illuminated only by the steps he would choose to take next. Would he embrace the vulnerability of true change, or retreat into the comfort of the past? The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly as David stepped back into the simmering atmosphere of the gallery. Every sound, the chatter, the clinks of glasses, felt like a distant echo overshadowed by the fluttering anxiety in his chest. He could still feel the weight of Matthew's words lingering, a stark challenge to his well-defined narrative of the past. Each heartbeat echoed a reminder of the decision he faced, and the uncertainty looming like a dark cloud overhead. As he searched for Lucy, he couldn't shake off the heaviness that came with unearthing memories he had long buried. What did it mean to forgive, to step away from the sharp edges of resentment? Clearing his throat, David focused his gaze on the swirling masses of creativity surrounding him. Art had always been a refuge, a place where vulnerability could transform into expression. Perhaps this moment with Matthew was no different. "David!" Lucy's warm voice beckoned him back. She stood surrounded by a small group, discussing a piece that had captivated their attention. The glow of excitement on her face reminded him of why he was here. To connect, to explore, to express. Yet his cluttered mind fought against that aim, desperately trying to reconcile his past with his present. He approached slowly, letting Lucy's energy infuse him with a sense of purpose. As she introduced him to the others, he forced himself to engage. But he couldn't ignore the nagging thought about his conversation with Matthew. Resentment clashed with the tantalizing possibility of growth. It felt paradoxical, dissonant, and utterly human. "I love what you're doing with color here," Lucy said, gesturing towards a bold creation. David noticed how others leaned in, captivated by her words, their rapt attention reflecting the respect they held for her opinion. It struck him then how she had a gift for nurturing. She could draw out the best in others. Could he summon a similar courage? "Thank you," he replied, forcing a smile. Inwardly, he wrestled with his reflections. Was he destined to remain stagnant? Would reconciling with Matthew grant him the freedom he so desperately craved, or plunge him deeper into old wounds? "David?" Lucy's concerned voice sliced through his reverie. The probing look in her eyes pierced through his defenses, revealing the silent turmoil he struggled to conceal. "What's going on?" He hesitated, grappling with how much to reveal. Vulnerability was terrifying, yet he recognized that making art often meant laying bare one's soul. "I ran into Matthew," he finally admitted, his voice low. Her brow furrowed with understanding. "The one from your old work?" David nodded. "He's changed, apparently. He wants to apologize, but I don't know if I can handle it. It's complicated. Sometimes the toughest decisions hold the potential for the greatest growth," Lucy observed, her tone gentle yet firm. "Can you imagine how it might feel to release that weight? What if that closure helps you move forward, in life, in your art?" The reality of her words flooded David's consciousness. Could confronting Matthew provide the catharsis he needed? Was there depth in this confrontation that could elevate his own personal development? As he met Lucy's unwavering gaze, determination stirred within him, a fresh light that dared to illuminate the fog of his doubt. "I don't want to be defined by that pain," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Then don't be," Lucy prompted, and her unwavering confidence in him propelled him toward clarity. Reframing the situation, David realized that confronting Matthew didn't mean relinquishing the past. It meant owning his story, reshaping the narrative. For too long he had allowed others to dictate his worth. "Maybe it's time," he whispered, finding a resolve he hadn't felt before. The decision was clearer now, each moment aligning like brushstrokes on a canvas, creating a vibrant picture of potential. As he excused himself from the group, David walked towards a quieter corner, the sounds of the gallery muffled in the distance. He drew in a shaky breath, summoning every ounce of courage. Unfinished business lurked close. It was time to confront it head-on. Would he find a way to blend understanding with assertiveness? An act of crafting the narrative into a brighter vision for himself? The thought gripped him with a sense of urgency, a fire igniting within as he prepared to take that step toward Matthew, one that could ultimately redefine the essence of who he wanted to be. But what happened next would shift the entire foundation of his choices, a question lingering in the air. Would he find the reconciliation he sought? Or would the encounter unravel everything he'd come to know? David's heart raced as he approached Matthew, each step a mix of trepidation and resolve. He could see Matthew waiting near the bar, his posture a blend of confidence and uncertainty. two men caught in the very act of transformation. The vibrant energy of the gallery enveloped them, yet everything felt muted to David as the footsteps of the evening faded into the background. "Matthew," David said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind within. "You wanted to talk?" "Yeah," Matthew replied, his sincerity evident. "I've wanted to reach out for a long time. I'm sorry for how I treated you back then. I realize now I let my own insecurities overshadow your talent." David glanced back at Lucy, her laughter ringing out like a bell, reminding him of the joys he'd recently unearthed within himself. He took a breath, weighing the weight of the past against the freedom of the present. "Why now?" David asked, narrowing the distance between them. "What's changed?" Matthew's gaze fell momentarily to the floor, crumbling the bravado that had colored his earlier demeanor. "I started attending therapy. For years, I kept avoiding my mistakes, pretending they didn't exist. But embracing them, acknowledging them, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do." Something stirred within David, a twisted relief mixed with resentment. He could see the ghost of his younger self reflected in Matthew's eyes, filled with a desperation to be acknowledged and revisioned. Yet he wasn't the only one who had transformed. "You're asking for forgiveness?" David probed, still resistant. "Not an easy one, just the opportunity to speak my truth. I want to understand how I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive, but I hope you can at least hear me out." Matthew's vulnerable admission struck a chord. Pause. David felt a wave of doubt wash over him, but beneath that tide lay an undeniable clarity. "Is this truly about your growth, or is it about your own guilt?" he pressed. Matthew winced, the question spilling unfiltered honesty into the air. "Both, if I'm honest," David reflected on his own growth. He had spent too long avoiding his truth, burying the pieces of himself that craved validation. He had fought relentlessly for progress, battling the shadows that clung to him, perhaps offering a chance at understanding could illuminate another path. "All right," David replied, the decision fluttering out of him like a release. "Let's talk." They stepped away from the noise, finding a quiet corner that held the remnants of their past. The shadows of memory crept in, and David saw the two anxious men they once were, confronting a much larger truth: the power of forgiveness. Memories jostled within David's mind, but instead of drowning in them, he chose to embrace the challenge. "You had a way of dismissing my art," he finally admitted, feeling air push through his constricted chest. "Back then, it felt like a betrayal. It dimmed the light I thought I had." "I know," Matthew said softly. And in that moment, David sensed the vulnerability surrounding them wasn't just Matthew's. It was his too. "I thought suppressing your light made mine shine brighter. I realize now that it smothered us both." With that admission lay an opening, a genuine recognition of their intertwined journeys. Hurt surfaced once more, but it bore the softer tones of transformation rather than resentment. Each harsh critique I received later returned as echoes, reminders of my failures. I carried that baggage long after we parted ways, Matthew confessed, his brow furrowing in memories both bittersweet and raw. David allowed the words to swell within him. They had battled their own demons. "I get it," David said slowly, leaning into the connection they could forge. "But I rebuilt myself. I didn't want to be defined by past failures." "Me too," Matthew replied, the sincerity sharp between them. "I buried myself in resentments. But honestly, I'm here because I want to establish clarity in a fog of mistakes." David nodded, the pieces slipping into place like color on a canvas. "Mistakes can be the foundation for reflection. I should know. I had to learn that to support my daughter in her journey." Matthew's eyes narrowed in appreciation. Your daughter has inspired me to be brave enough to confront my own choices. A small smile crept on David's face. The energy was shifting. Perhaps reconciliation could flourish through acceptance, like an endless cycle of healing. Forgiveness is a process. I'm ready for that process, Matthew replied, the weight of his words radiating through David like warmth on cold skin. I don't wish to replay the past, but forge a new narrative. Let's begin that narrative. David agreed, tension slipping from his shoulders as they extended a guarded handshake, sealing an unspoken commitment. Let's be brave together, Matthew added, the resolution glowing between them, a sense of shared hope. As their conversation flowed deeper, David felt the lingering shadows of self-doubt dissolve, replaced by an understated confidence. This moment marked more than reconciliation. It signified acceptance, both of the past and of the present, where journey and artistry intertwined. As Lucy approached, her laughter brightened the space, and David felt his spirit buoyed. "Dad, look!" she exclaimed, her hand gesturing toward the growing crowd captivated by their artwork. "They love it, just like I knew they would." His heart swelled with an acknowledgement that no longer felt diminished by fear. David approached Lucy, his hand finding hers. "Yes, they do," he said, returning the joy in her voice with a deep-seated pride. "I think we're all learning to paint our truths, aren't we?" He mused, glancing at Matthew, who stood by, head held high. "In more ways than one," Matthew replied, a newfound warmth anchoring him. With that, David recognized his growth wasn't solely about art. It was about reshaping narratives, embracing the truth within pain, and nurturing bonds strengthened through vulnerability. As the evening unfolded, David stood shoulder to shoulder with Lucy and now Matthew, in a fusion of journeys awakened by creativity. Together they ventured forth, vibrant strokes of color illuminating lives once caught in shadow, and urging forward into the light of newfound understanding, resilience, and authentic connection. This was no longer simply a gallery. It was more, an affirmation of growth, a testament of openness, and the promise that they could allow vulnerability to unleash a transformative power, both individually and together. Now more than ever, David felt as though he could truly embrace the artist within him, one who was unafraid to unveil his truth. As the last whispers of the evening began to echo, he understood. This was just the beginning. So, as you reflect on these transformative journeys, declare boldly your own truths. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of championing these transformations.